water and glue. Now that the bridge is in and the track work's complete, I'm ready to start the scenery in my layout. But I want to know two things before I begin. First, is there any trick to making scenic glue? And second, what's the most realistic way to model water? I started with the glue. I wanted to know how much water needs to be added, and is it better to spray the alcohol on first or to mix it with the glue and save a step? I used 4 different types of soil and 3 glue mixes. The soils were ballast and 10% unsanded grout, sifted dirt from the yard, and dirt plus 25% grout. The glue mixes were 50% glue, a 1:1 water to glue ratio, 25% glue, a 3:1 ratio, and 50% glue plus 10% alcohol mixed in. The test samples for the glues without the alcohol were pre-wetted. I kept track of how fast the glue soaked in and evaluated them after 24 hours to cure. Results. The 10% alcohol premix and the 25% glue mix soaked in far faster than the 50% glue mix. The grout mixes seemed to need more water. The 25% grout mix resisted penetration by all the glue mixes, and the glue formed a thin, shiny, ugly skin on the surface. I did a rough measurement of the strength by forcing a nail set into the sample on top of a scale. The strongest combo was the 25% glue and the 10% grout mix. The weakest was the 25% glue and plain dirt, but they were all more than strong enough for scenery. Making the water scenery samples, I decided to use the 50% glue and 10% alcohol mix. Going from a test square to actual scenery made it obvious that applying the glue with a dropper resulted in way too much glue for complete coverage without brushing it around, which I wanted to avoid. After the samples were glued, I tried spraying and found the minimum dilution was more like a 5:1 water to glue to get it to spray, and a fine spray pattern is better than a coarse spray pattern meant for a more viscous material. I'm still not happy with the spraying performance, and I'm going to investigate more. For one, I need a better spray bottle. And now, water. There are many different techniques for modeling water and countless tutorials on how to do them, but I've never seen the results compared side by side, which is what I'm going to do next. I'm looking at modeling waves, waterfalls, and the color using the most common water material, clear epoxy resin. First we'll consider the color. Water's blue, right? Well, no, and yes, and no. Pure water is colorless and transparent, but as light passes through it, some of it gets absorbed, and far more red gets absorbed than blue, such that when you're down 10 to 15 feet, nearly all that's left is blue light. If you happen to be over white sands, that water looks blue. But what if you're not? What if you're over something that's tan, red, brown, orangish, like most of our scenery? Well, when those colors are illuminated by blue light, they just tend to look dark. Water can take on specific colors like green or blue or tan or brown, but those are specific situations that cause that. And unless you're modeling those situations, you probably want to avoid making them those kind of colors. But we're going to try some and see what they look like. For the test, I made 4 scenery samples. Each one has a stream, a pond, and a waterfall. This is sample 1. It has a green stream, a blue pond, a toilet paper waterfall, and sponged Mod Podge waves. Originally I was going to do toilet paper waves until I did some research and found out those are only done on opaque things where they're painted and varnished and there's no actual depth. The sponged Mod Podge waves turned out really well. I was especially happy I could make ripples around the waterfall very well with them. The toilet paper waterfall is the least convincing of all of them, and let's let you take a little look at it here. Sample 2 has brown tinted water and clear caulk for the waterfall and the wave effects. The clear caulk provided a lot of fine detail. It would probably be good for smaller scales. It's also very sculptable. You can mold waves around rocks and put a lot of detail in the waterfall, which I got a little heavy-handed on this one with the white dry brushing. You can also pack it into places and it stays there, unlike the Mod Podge, so it's good for that. Drawbacks are it stays sticky and tacky for a long time, and if you lay out lines on a clear sheet like many of the tutorials, you want to make sure you do this on acrylic because it will stick to glass, but it peels off very easily from the acrylic. Sample 3 has carbon nanopowder for the colorant and Mod Podge for the waves in the waterfall. The carbon was very potent and it got too dark. I diluted it with a whole nother batch of resin and it was still too dark, but I was running low on resin and had to go with what I had. I think it'll work good if used a lot more sparingly. The Mod Podge waves in this one were airbrushed. It looks good, but it's a little hard to control the direction. The waterfall is very two-dimensional, and it shares the following traits with the clear silicone caulk before. It needs something to push it out away from the edge of the waterfall, probably benefit from being done on acetate the whole way, and they're kind of floppy when they're not supported. But it does look pretty good. Last is sample 4. This has a painted bottom in the riverbed. It has sponged Mod Podge waves and resin-soaked cotton for the waterfall. What I found out was the resin I used did not like being wet by the Mod Podge, and everything pooled up, so these waves didn't look very good. The cotton turned out pretty well. If I did it again, I would not have the flares on the bottom. I'd keep them smaller, and I think I would put like a dark painted piece of wire core in them to give them some shape and a little more depth to the color. And I'm surprised at how well the painting turned out. I didn't have high hopes for it, but it looks pretty good. And here are all 4 of the samples side by side, so you can compare the different wave, waterfall, and coloring techniques and see which one you think looks the best or would work for you. If you like this at all, stay tuned. I'm going to be working on scenery next. We're going to build a small depot, 3D print it, build a coal mine from scratch, and probably a little bit more. Thanks for watching.